All right, good morning. My name is Nomi Dusan, and I, along with Floyd Weissner and Omer Khwaja, represent the parents of George Kabal. George Kabal was a young man in the prime of his life who was the apple of his mother's eye and a leader in his family. And he was taken away from his family, literally ripped from their clutches as a result of Boeing Corporation's greed. In my 20 years of working on aviation cases around the world, I have never seen a more reckless example of a company putting profit over safety. Boeing Corporation, as our complaint outlines, marketed the 737 MAX as one of the safest planes in the world. It was their best-selling plane in the history of the corporation, and the reason Boeing was able to sell so many of the 737 MAX planes is because it promised to its customers, the airlines around the world, double-digit fuel savings, which in a highly competitive industry meant more money for the bottom line of the airline. And how did they promise double-digit fuel savings? How did they promise such an increase in profit? Well, by developing and mounting a much bigger engine on a 50-year-old plane. The Boeing 737 was introduced by Boeing in 1967. And for 50 years, they've tweaked the plane, redeveloped it, made it longer, made the engine bigger, made the wings longer, to keep trying to profit from that design. So the Boeing 737 was basically taking a 50-year-old plane and putting bigger engines on it. And what happened when they put the bigger engines on it, they had to mount those engines differently on the wings. And by mounting those bigger engines differently on the wings, this changed the flight characteristics of the plane. What happened is that the plane would then pitch up when the pilots were not aware of it. And this changed the flight characteristics of the plane. It's called the MCAS system. And we all know now what Boeing knew then, before the first plane was delivered, that there was an issue with the MCAS system. But did Boeing step up and explain that to the pilots, to the airlines, to its customers that, hey, we need to tell you about this MCAS system. This is what the software does. This is why it's there. That the plane has a propensity to do something dangerous, so you should be made aware of it. Did they do any of that? Did they include an explanation of the MCAS system in the operating manual of the new 737 MAX? No, they didn't do any of that. Because they didn't want to increase the cost of the plane. They didn't want airlines to incur additional training for its pilots. They wanted to continue to sell this plane at a record pace. Boeing has 5,000 orders for this plane that sells for a list price of around $120 million. So what did Boeing do? It made the decision to just stay quiet and put profits over safety. So when the plane started getting delivered in 2017 and pilots started reporting issues with the plane, did Boeing do anything about it? No. It put profit over safety. And then when Lion Air 610 crashed minutes after takeoff from Jakarta International Airport last year, at that time did Boeing step up when 157 people were killed as a result of Boeing's greed? No. Did Boeing step up and say, we understand there's a problem with this plane and we should probably ground this plane until we figure out what the problem is? No. Did Boeing say, we need to tell you guys about the MCAS system. We need all pilots trained on the MCAS system. We need all pilots to understand how to disable the MCAS system. Did Boeing do that? No. Boeing told Lion Air this plane is safe to fly. Boeing told the world this plane is safe to fly. And Boeing allowed me, my family, your family, our friends, our co-workers around the world to continue to fly on a dangerous plane that it knew was dangerous in order to put profit over safety. And then tragically, months later, on March 10th of this year, when Ethiopian Airlines Flight 302 crashed minutes after taking off and killed another 149 people, did Boeing at that time step up and say, we know there's a problem with this plane. We know there's a problem with the software. We know there's an issue with the angle of attack sensors. We know that we didn't properly train the pilots on how to disable the MCAS system. Did Boeing do any of that? When the entire world was rushing to ground the 437 delivered planes in the world, to put them on the ground, did Boeing agree to do that? No. What did Boeing do? The exact opposite. Boeing's CEO got on the phone with the President of the United States of America and explained to the President, Mr. President, this plane is a safe plane. The United States of America should definitely not ground the plane, or something to that effect. It didn't take responsibility. And as the days followed and the evidence became insurmountable, that the MCAS system definitely contributed to the crash of Ethiopian Flight 302, the FAA was left with no alternative but to ground the plane. So now the 737 MAX is grounded. But even after grounding the plane, if you read Boeing's statement, it says, "We believe in the safety of this plane." So even then, they continued to insist that the plane was safe. Well, we know now what Boeing knew way back then, that the Boeing 737 MAX, as designed and as built, is not a safe plane. And that is why it has not been flying. And that is why it will probably not be flying until at least the end of the summer. You don't fix something that's not broken. And Boeing and its engineers and subcontractors have been working furiously to fix the Boeing 737 MAX. But as they try to fix the MCAS system, other problems have come to light. This is a prime example of a company disregarding the lives of people in order to put profit over safety. Our clients have hired us to do two things. One is to get answers for them through the discovery process in the United States of America. And in order to do that, yesterday we filed a complaint on behalf of George Cabal's parents in United States Federal District Court in Illinois. And by doing that, this will allow us through the discovery process to look into Boeing's decision-making process. So our clients have retained us to find out what happened, why it happened, and to prevent this from happening in the future. It's important for our clients to try to explain to the world why this happened and how this can be prevented in the future. And our clients also want us to hold Boeing accountable for its decision-making process. They made the conscious decision to allow the public to continue to fly on an unsafe product, on an unsafe plane that they knew was dangerous, but they decided to ignore it and roll the dice. Secondly, our clients are hoping a jury in the United States of America will not only compensate them for their irreplaceable loss, but also hold Boeing accountable for the fact that it did something that caused the tragic life of 346 people. We know now what Boeing has said. The Boeing CEO has come out and acknowledged that the MCAS system contributed to the Ethiopian Flight 302 crash, and the MCAS system contributed to the Lion Air 610 crash. And the Boeing CEO has apologized. But you know what? The Boeing CEO's apology is not going to bring back George Cabal. It is not going to bring back the 345 other beautiful people who lost their lives on those two flights. It's not going to fix the shattered lives of all of the relatives, friends, and co-workers of those beautiful people who were on those two flights. It's not going to do any of that. I'm sorry, it's just not enough. We hope that a United States jury, after considering all the evidence which will be presented to them in a trial, will hold Boeing accountable and send a message to Boeing and all other large corporations that have billions and billions of dollars of sales every year, and high-level contacts in the government to the extent where the CEO can pick up the phone and call the President of the United States. We hope a jury in the United States of America will tell Boeing that it doesn't matter how big you are and how much money you have and what kind of contacts you have. When you put profits over safety, you will be held accountable and you will have to pay a price. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for attending. At this time, I'd like to introduce my client, Esther Cabal. Esther, would you please come up here and speak shortly about George?
I'm Esther Cabal, Wanyeke. George was my follower, the third one. George was the fourth one. And I just want to say something small about George. We have lost a young man at the peak of his life. He was only 29 years old. An ambitious, hardworking gentleman, super impactful in his life. George was a shooting star. In anything and everything he touched, his relationships. My parents are devastated. None of us, his four siblings, can replace him. My mom especially keeps on mourning her favorite son. I say favorite because he was always, any minute he got, he was always at home, ready to give them a hand, ready to assist in everything, and even at their old age, he would always spend any single minute he had with them, at least to keep them away from the loneliness. My mom keeps on asking, who shall be visiting us now? That's adding pressure even on us, the siblings who've been left. Because it's a gap we can't fill, honestly. George didn't even have a family. He intended to have a family. He had communicated to several people. He was going to get married by the end of the year. That he was not given a chance to do that. He didn't leave a child. My mom is devastated. Again, she feels as if his legacy has all been wiped away. Because there's no child to carry. We all know the African culture. There's no child to carry on his name. George was very impactful, even at work. His peers, his colleagues, they are all devastated. I doubt whether any of them has been able to board a plane, but I'm sure they shall deal with it in their own way. His work environment, he had really thrived. Relationships, as I said, extended family, everything he touched just got to excel in everything. We cannot replace him, and he cannot and shall not be replaced. But we pray that by what is happening, my parents especially, and us as his siblings and all other loved ones, can use his demise to ensure safe travel for all. Thank you.
My name is Tom Kabau. I am the eldest son of Mr. Kabau and Mrs. Kabau. George was my younger brother. I'm 10 years older than him. I have watched George grow from a young boy full of discipline, focus, and very caring. It pains me when I remember how I waited for my younger brother, because I had only sisters, for 10 years, and now he's gone because of recklessness and greed for money by the Boeing Corporation. But more so, I'm deeply concerned with the effect of George's demise on my parents, and especially my father. I remember when we got the report that George had died, I could not wait to see the official report at the airport, but I had to rush home to be there when my parents received that information, because I knew it was going to be terrible. George was very close to my father, because anytime he was not in Nairobi, or outside the country, he would travel over the weekends to be with them, and they would talk for long hours with my father. Anytime my father would want to travel quite far, it is George who would drive him, and they would have long conversations. My father has never been the same since this happened. He has not been able to reconcile with that reality. And I want to say this: the CEO of Boeing, who is keeping on talking about profits, who is keeping on talking about how they are going to mitigate losses by airlines. He's just speaking about angle of attack, but not about safety, not about those who have died, those who have perished. I want to tell the CEO of Boeing, he did not do to George what he would have done to his son. And I want my father to know that the CEO of Boeing did not do what he would have done to his son. And therefore, will do anything possible to ensure justice for George and safety for all. George, as has been said, had a great future as an engineer at General Electric at the age of 29. Had undergone a lot of training, and his future was bright. George was an extremely careful and cautious man. Anytime we drove with him, he would emphasize to me good and defensive driving skills. I feel pain when I realized that George was taken away by the negligence, recklessness, and lack of care of others. He was taken away by what he was always against. And therefore, I would want to say this, that the action we are taking and why we have retained the lawyers to take the legal action on our behalf is not only for justice for George. It is beyond justice for George only. But it is for us who travel every day. It is for you who has to use a plane. We don't want any time you enter a Boeing jet, you are fearing whether you are going to arrive to your destination. It is for humanity that we must put the message straight that air safety must override profits. That the defining factor of air travel is not fuel saving, is not the profit to be made, but that every person, individual who boards a plane must arrive at his destination. Thank you.
My name is Chomtai from Citizen. Just want to hear the apology issued by the Boeing CEO in essence was seen as an admission of fault. And there is the perception out there that Boeing may try to approach the families of the victims individually to try and settle and compensate them. Has your client received any word from Boeing in terms of compensation?
By Boeing approaching our families, our clients, and we filed a lawsuit last week on behalf of a United States citizen, Moad Hassan, who was a resident of St. Cloud, Minnesota. So that was filed last week, and yesterday we filed on behalf of George Cabal's parents. But again, that just rewards Boeing for its greed and reckless conduct. It just sends a message to any large corporation with lots of money that, you know, go ahead and make this decision, and if people are injured or killed, then you can just use more money to make the problem go away. And that's not why we're involved in the case. We want to discover why Boeing made this decision. Where are the documents? Where are the emails? Where are the witnesses? People in Boeing Corporation knew before the first plane was delivered in late 2017 that there were problems with this plane. So the answer to your question in regard to the Cabal family is an unequivocal no. We are not interested in taking any money from Boeing at this time. We're going to let the litigation process play out. We're going to do the discovery, which is exchange of documents, exchange of written questions, and then oral depositions, sworn oral depositions will be taken, so that we can get all the evidence presented to our client. And at that time, we'll be in a position to evaluate what the value of the claim is. Not only to compensate the parents of George Cabal, but also to hold Boeing accountable and responsible for its greed and reckless action, and to punish them for this.
According to investigations, it wasn't just about the Max series. It goes up to the Dreamline. That the actions that were taken to do shortcuts affect all these planes, from Max to even the Dreamliner, and even there was involvement of the US government, that the US government was even behind the push. So in your courts, let's say submissions that you're preparing for the court proceedings, is there a place for the US government's responsibility for this mess?
Well, I don't want to speak about any other Boeing product other than the 737 MAX, because this case is about the 737 MAX. So first of all, let me make that clear. In regards to the governmental agency in the United States that certifies all planes to fly is the Federal Aviation Authority. And it's clear from our initial investigation and from the good work the press corps is doing around the world that the Federal Aviation Authority abdicated a lot of its responsibility to Boeing, the same company whose plane it was supposed to certify. So we're hoping that through the discovery process, and as we obtain more information directly from Boeing and the FAA, we'll be able to further investigate and see if it's limited to this plane or if it moves on to other products. Yes, sir.
Perhaps a question from here. From your statement, it seems the FAA is culpable and also Boeing is culpable. So are you also likely to sue the FAA?
Right now, we know that Boeing designed, manufactured, marketed, and sold this plane and continue to keep it on the market. So really, the buck stops with Boeing. That doesn't mean after our investigation and the litigation process starts and we obtain more information that we wouldn't add another party to the case. But at this time, we have just sued the Boeing Corporation. Yes, sir.
Maybe in terms of trying to manage costs on the side of the families, given that there are 157 deaths, is there a possibility of maybe families coming together and opening a lawsuit, maybe to manage costs and maybe build a more solid case?
That would be up to the individual families. I could say that we were here 2 weeks ago at the invitation of Bernard Tsang and Chegi Jirogi, and that's how we met Tom and Esther, because Tom is partners with Chegi. And they know other passengers and families, so we've met with a lot of people. That's a decision that's left to the individual family, so I really don't want to comment on that.
My name is Moses from EP. I've got two questions. How many families are you targeting to represent?
I only want to speak about
How much are you going for in terms of figures, compensation?
I only want to speak about the families that we're currently representing, that we filed a lawsuit on behalf of. So I don't want to speak as to any other families at this time, because different families have instructed us to take different action. The two families that we currently represent are the family of Moad Hassan, who's a U.S. citizen, a resident of St. Cloud, Minnesota, and the family of George Cabal. Both of these clients, we filed a lawsuit in the United States District Court in the state of Illinois. As far as compensation is concerned, we have not asked for a maximum amount of compensation in our complaint. We want the jury in the United States of America to hear all of the evidence, to hear that what Boeing did, how much money Boeing made from the sale of this plane, what actions and inactions Boeing took, and then allow a jury to decide how much it should award our clients for compensation for the loss of George Cabal, and also to punish Boeing Corporation for its greedy, reckless conduct, which directly led to the loss of 346 lives when you consider both the plane crashes.
Are you offering the services?
Sergeant, yes sir.
Yes, I'm Dennis from 824. If at all there are other families who are interested maybe to join, is there something that they need to do or payment that they need to make so that they can be part of the rest of the family that they've presented?
I don't want to get into the terms of our contract, but most lawyers in America, as I'm sure every family has been approached through a family or a friend, we work on a contingency basis, which means the families pay us nothing up front. They don't even pay us expenses. We take the case on, and at the conclusion of the case, if the case is successful, we take a percentage of the recovery. We're here all day today, we're here all day tomorrow at the hotel. We'll be departing for another country to meet with additional clients late tomorrow evening.
Hi, Lena Gakandi, I'm freelancing for NPR. You mentioned that you're investigating other parties, for example, the FAA. Are there any other parties in that investigation, for example, Ethiopian Airlines, or for now is it just Boeing?
Right now we are not looking at Ethiopian Airlines. We believe the investigation shows that the pilot and co-pilot acted heroically under a tremendous situation. We haven't seen the report, but we've read through the press that the report showed that the pilot did everything he was supposed to do. Unfortunately, he was not trained on the MCAS system. The MCAS system was not on the new operations manual. The MCAS disclosure was not on the sheet that showed pilots the difference between the last model 737 and the new 737 MAX. It didn't even explain that, hey, we've got this new software. It will pitch the nose down using the horizontal stabilizers in the back. If the angle of attack sensors think the plane is pitched too high, in order to avoid a stall, it will bring the nose down. None of that was disclosed to them. So at this time, we are not looking at Ethiopian Airlines at all.
Is there anyone other than FAA that you're investigating right now?
We are investigating other subcontractors. At this time, I do not want to disclose their names because we haven't made a decision on whether they'll be added to the litigation. But I will tell you that Boeing has 900 subcontractors that worked on the 737 MAX, and Boeing designs the plane and then gives contracts to subcontractors that make the parts, and then Boeing assembles the planes in its factory in Seattle.
Hi, I'm Captain Harwood, the Wounded Career Chief. After the Lion Air crash, a number of families were given an agreement which indemnified Boeing and its subcontractors from lawsuits which they signed in return for compensation. Have you heard about any families here that were involved in the Ethiopian Airlines crash being approached with such agreements?
As far as the families that were approached after the Lion Air crash, shortly after losing their loved ones, while they were mourning the loss and the bodies weren't even recovered, and Boeing Corporation or its insurers or whoever going into the homes of these people who were still in shock from losing their relative and offering them money and making them sign an agreement that was discharging and fully releasing 900 component manufacturers, I believe is completely unconscionable, irresponsible, and frankly disgusting. As far as the Ethiopian Airlines passengers, I have not heard, ma'am, of the families being approached, and I hope that action is not taken. I will tell you that in 20 years of working on aviation cases and meeting with families all around the world, I have been extremely impressed with the type of questions that families have been asking us about the litigation and the process, and how much of a thoughtful process they're going and taking the decision of hiring an attorney so responsibly, and not just signing up with the first lawyer that decides to parachute into Nairobi and pretend to be an aviation lawyer.